Hello and thanks for stopping by. This is The Simpsons Road Rage for the PlayStation 2, released in 2001 by Electronic Arts. I got this particular copy in a trade from Mark over at the Dad Racer Show. I'll link to his channel in the comments of this video. This is one of my frequent retro video game stops on YouTube, and I recommend the channel. It's a lot of fun. Starting off, obviously, with this one, this is a Simpsons game. If you appreciate the franchise, you might be interested in this one. If you aren't a fan of The Simpsons, then this game probably isn't going to convert you to one. The Simpsons is a two-dimensional cartoon, and like many cartoons that try to make the jump to video games, they have to convert a two-dimensional expected image or concept into 3 dimensions. It's passable here, but it's certainly strange to see The Simpsons in 3D. It does resemble the show in terms of color palettes, I guess, and rough design, but it's definitely different. Now, of course, I'm a fan of The Simpsons, so this one works well for me. We have an arcade-style racer in the style of Crazy Taxi, but honestly, to call it in the style of Crazy Taxi kind of feels like a disservice. It's really Crazy Taxi with a different skin. There was a lawsuit, it seems, over this, and I guess there was a settlement of some type. Now, is this one better than Crazy Taxi? I don't know if I go that far, but it's definitely fun enough. You choose a character from The Simpsons, and that character has their own unique vehicle. It's something that suits that character, and it handles differently depending on the character you play, so that's kind of nice. And you race around this game, making money by picking up passengers and racing them to some sort of a destination. We have a few different game modes. You have the main mode, which is Road Rage. This is the predominant mode of the game. This is you racing around arcade style, just getting money. There's also Sunday Drive, which is just you driving around with no timer, just learning the maps, I suppose. And then there's a mission mode, where you have to perform certain tasks to succeed. Truthfully, I'm not a huge fan of the mission modes. The second mission I finished quicker than the loading time it took to get the level ready to play, so it just felt like a waste. There's also a head-to-head mode too. I think you have to connect over a LAN connection to play with a friend. I never really did that much with the PlayStation 2. This was before the internet was as huge as it is now. I don't even think the PlayStation Store existed. So, we have a racing game here, and you have a time limit, and the time limit it's ticking down as you're trying to deliver your passenger to a destination. And of course, if you do it faster, you're going to get a little bit more money, and it'll add a few seconds to your overall game timer. This is a game where you're always trying to manage the time of the game. When you run out of time, the game's over. So you're trying to get as good as driving as humanly possible to get all the bonus time you can added to your total. It handles well enough with the analog sticks, and there's tons of dodging involved in this one. When you crash into something, you don't explode or take damage, you just lose time. In that regard, I guess I'd consider this to be a kid-friendly game. Now, there is an underlying story here, but it really isn't anything special to write home about, and you're not really going through chapters to solve it. You're focusing on driving people to destinations. But they did attempt to make a story. Or, it's at least a reason for all this driving around to begin with. In this one, Mr. Burns takes over the mass transit system, and he plans on using his own radioactive buses to cart people around. Okay, to combat this, you become a freelance taxi driver, and you're trying to get enough money to buy back the transit system, I suppose. Not that great of a story to start with, but I guess it gets us in a vehicle driving around. Now, along the way in this one, as you race around, Mr. Burns is going to show up from time to time, and he'll crash into you. His only goal really is to slow you down, so if you see him, just avoid him. So, you gather money in this one as you cart people around, and what's nice is, as you keep playing, the funds keep getting saved onto your total as you play additional games. The accrued funds are what you're going to use to unlock the different items in the game. When you start the game, you only have one map, and you can only play one of 5 different Simpsons characters. But when you gather enough money, you can choose to open up a new character or a new map. We're talking a total of, I think there are 16 characters you can unlock, which each has their own vehicle, and there are 6 maps, so we've got a decent amount of variety here, and avatars, of course, and different locations that you can play. Personally, my vote is to unlock maps before you start unlocking characters. Mostly to avoid the monotony of racing around the exact same map game after game. Get yourself at least one other map for variety. I think it's going to help you want to play more. I've been playing this one in 15 to 20 minute spurts, and that works out to be about 3 to 4 games, and that's you accruing about $5,000 of in-game currency. That's about when I'm ready to put this one down. Like I mentioned earlier, it's an arcade-style game, so it's going to have a certain amount of repetition to it. And of course, there aren't a ton of story elements to pull you along, it's just you racing around, delivering people to places. But the maps are interesting enough, and after a few games, I think you start to memorize certain parts of the layout. There's also a large hand in the top center of the screen that's supposed to be guiding you to your destination, but you really can't focus much of your attention on this one, because you're busy driving around dodging traffic. It certainly helps, but I think you're going to find yourself paying a little less attention to it as you get acclimated to the gameplay and the different maps. Plus, this hand doesn't actually point out shortcuts. When you start memorizing levels, you're going to start to understand where can I hop a curb, where can I drive behind a building, or maybe find a hidden passage. You're going to be able to save time in some of these places doing this, and it's kind of fun when you start to find these little areas. The character voices in the game, they're all the original voice actors from the show, of course. They basically recorded a bunch of sound clips for the game, and then those get inserted at various moments. I think for fans of the show, hearing the voices, it's a fun novelty, but they don't always seem to match up very well in the game. Usually they're okay, but sometimes characters spout clips that just seem totally misplaced. One game I actually heard a bunch of audio clips from the last passenger that I dropped off, as opposed to the one I was currently driving, so I thought that was kind of strange. This game was released for a few different systems. There was a GameCube version and an Xbox version. They both have copies. I can't speak to the quality of those games yet, but the PlayStation 2, I think the biggest detractor is that the load times between games and the saves, they feel lengthy to me. And I'm curious to know if the other systems have the same bottleneck. But it's odd to be playing a level, especially the mission modes, and feel like you spend more time loading the level or saving than you do actually playing it. I think for an arcade-style play, sort of a pick-up and put-down game, this one's fun enough. I mean, I wouldn't sit down and dump hours into this one at a whack, but it's certainly good to play for a little while and then move on to something else. I think, compared to other Simpsons games, though, I'm not sure how this one stacks up. I've only looked at one other Simpsons game on the channel so far. I'll link to that in the description. Different system, different era, really, but there are a bunch of Simpsons games out there, and some are actually quite involved. Well, that's all I have today for Simpsons Road Rage for the PlayStation 2. If you like this sort of thing, please feel free to like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and thanks for stopping by. Hope to catch you on another video.